morning and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. Today's micro moment continues our Staying Safe series, and it's a very sad discussion, but one that is very, very necessary, and that is staying safe when shots are fired. You know, I have been an educator for almost 60 years. When I first started as an elementary school teacher, teaching 6th grade in Houston, Texas, it was 1965. 1965 was my first year of teaching, and I had 34 kids in my class in a school in Houston. At the new teacher preparation days that we had to do about a week before class actually started, one of the things that all new teachers had to be trained on was the type of drills that we had to teach our students as we entered the classroom. One was a fire drill, what to do and how to behave during a fire drill, how to exit the classroom orderly, how to go down the hall, how to get out, which exit to go out, and where to stand. And then the bomb drills. It was the mid-60s. It was the middle of the civil rights movement. It was in the middle of the Cold War. And the threats were from nuclear attack, bomb threats, whatever. And so part of my entire educational life has been in teaching people who were in my classrooms, both elementary and then later on at the university level, what to do in the event that bad things would happen. And in a university classroom, you really don't think very much about that, and not a lot of time is spent in having the students go through drills. But I talked my students through things, and now it's not necessarily fire drills, although we have had a couple of false fire alarms in different universities where I have been, where everybody says, what's that, what's that, what's that? And because of my prior training, I said, it sounds like a fire drill to me, we need to exit the building. But we didn't have any prior training. But now, in recent years, over about the past decade, all university employees have been trained every single year on what we call active shooter drills. And we don't put our students through any kind of practice of any kind. It's just as an employee of the university, we need to know what the expectations are. And the hope was, of course, for faculty members that we would translate that into our classrooms. I always talk to my students about that very thing. My information today comes from a number of sources, primarily from the FBI, and they have a good video out there. And I'm going to put the link for that video where you can watch and see a reenactment of the things that I'm going to be talking about. Active shooters have done their dirty work in all kinds of places, in elementary schools, high schools, universities, in stores, in churches. There is no place where we can go these days when we are out and about that can be considered 100% safe from an active shooter. And so what do we do when that happens? And the instructions are pretty universal regardless of this source. There are 3 things: run, hide, fight. Those are the 3 things. And every single year, and Jim will attest to this, we both, along with all the employees at our university, had to go through a training called Safe College trainings, where there's a series of videos that we have to watch every single year. And if we don't, then we don't get paid. So it was mandatory training, and it was just individual videos that we had to look at. And the same theme was run, hide, fight. Well, I'm going to go through the instructions that are given, and then I'm going to share with you how I interpreted that at various times in my career since we've had active shooters. So the first thing is run. And so when you are in any situation, it is very wise for you when you go in before there's any active shooter at all, and hopefully there would not be, you scan all around to know what your exit strategy would be relative to a shooter. If the shooter appears there, I'm going to go this way. If a shooter appears here, I'm going to go this way. Make sure that there are exits to get out of the building. In a grocery store, the exits would either be the front door, which most people would stream toward, or there's always a back door where deliveries are received. And it's generally by the dairy and produce areas where they bring the food out to restock for freshness. You go back there, and I haven't been back there, but there's got to be an exit to the outside because that's where deliveries are received. And so that's an option. But now, whenever I go anyplace, I always scan for exits just so that I know which direction, what options I have to run. And then when you figure out your position relative to the shooter's position, if you have a clear shot to an exit, do so as fast as you possibly can, and don't hesitate. Take others with you if you can, but get out and keep on going until you are in a very safe place. Leave your belongings behind. Don't say, oh, I've got to take my purse or I've got to take my cell phone. If it's not on your person, just leave it behind. And then as you are exiting, prevent others from going in that direction because there's an active shooter behind you. Then raise your hands and keep them visible. We've seen pictures of this when they exit students from an active shooter in a high school or university. They all come out with their hands raised and clearly visible for law enforcement. And then that is so that you won't be mistaken for the active shooter. And then call 911 when you are safe, especially if there is no sign of first responders. Then call 911. And if police are on the scene, you follow their instructions exactly. Don't ask questions. Do what they say and keep on going. If your escape route is blocked, then the next thing to do is hide. Find a place to hide. And in some places that's going to be difficult. If you're in the aisles of a store, you might go into a place where there is some clothing that you could hide in or groceries that you could hide behind. If it is in a university or a school, you can hide in your classroom. And if possible, if there is a door, if there's a room that you can hide in, lock and barricade the door. Throw any kind of furniture you can in front of that door. And then you want to stay as quiet as possible and keep others in the same area. Silence your cell phone. Silence anything that is making noise. And then call 911 if you can do it safely. If you cannot do it safely, if your voice is going to give away your position, just dial 911, leave the line open, and let the person on the other end of the line just listen to see what is going on. And then prepare some kind of defense plan. If you are alone, you have a few seconds, maybe a little bit longer, to prepare what you are going to do in case the shooter breaches where you are hiding. What will you do? If you are with other people, devise a plan. Make a coordinated plan of attack. And in this little FBI movie, you will see that 3 men who are trapped behind a bar, when the shooter comes into view, one of them is going to take the gun, one is going to take the head, the other is going to take, I think, the arms or the legs. And then when they go, they're committed, and they all go forward and rush at the very same time. So prepare some kind of a defense plan, and I'll tell you my thoughts on that in just a moment. So then we've kind of breached over to fight as a last resort. If your hiding place is discovered, if you have no other option, then fight. And remember that you are fighting for your life. So there's no milquetoast pansy type of actions here. You have to be loud and you have to be aggressive. At Jim's and my most recent university, when we were first hired about 13 years ago, our chief of police, Jim, do you remember him? I've forgotten what his name was.
I don't remember what his name is, but yeah.
He was stellar. And when he talked to faculty, he said, you be prepared for us to arrive on the scene, and all of us are going to be shouting and yelling and making all kinds of noise. We're going to be running. We're going to have aggressive stances as we come to the place where there is an aggressive shooter. Well, we can emulate that behavior. If we are fighting for our life, then we have to be loud and yell and scream anything to distract, throw things at him. Use teamwork. If you've had a few minutes with others, you can devise a plan, and you can go after that shooter in a coordinated way. And remember that you are fighting for your life. So don't you dare play fair. You gouge his eyes, you shove his nose into his brain, use your fingernails, kick, scratch, anything that you have to in order to save your life. And then after the run, hide, fight situation, if you are in a situation where there are other wounded people in the area, don't try to move a wounded person. But if someone is bleeding, you can help stop the bleeding by direct pressure or even using a tourniquet. Because people can bleed out and die in 5 minutes. And if we have the opportunity, if we are safe, then we can help with that as well. So in internalizing this idea of run, hide, fight, in my last 5 years, well, let me start back. When I was at BYU as a professor, I was teaching prospective elementary school students science. I had a science methods class, and my classroom and lab was downstairs. It was in the basement. It was the only classroom down there. It was accessible by an elevator or a stairway. And then once you came out of the stairway or off the elevator, it was a really long hall, big wide hall, open all the way, no other doors. And then it opened into my classroom, and my classroom did not have a door. And so if an active shooter would have gotten off the elevator or come down the stairway and looked down this hall, I would have been the only person in his line of sight. And then the classroom opened to the back where my students sat with their desks, but in the very back corner was a door to the outside and a stairway up. And rather than just say nothing to my students, every single class I ever had in that classroom, I would say, if something happens, if there is an active shooter, I'm going to yell, run. And you drop what you are doing. Don't even pick up so much as a pencil, and get yourselves out that back door and up the stairway to safety. So that was one thing. And then I did that as well in every classroom where I ever taught. And sometimes if we had a door or doors, I would assign people in each class to be the person who would get up and go over and close and lock the door. And then we would pile furniture in front of the door and stay quiet and stay down. Now, for the last 5 years of my career, I was in an office. I was in upper administration, and our administration building was divided into 2 different buildings with a breezeway between. The president and his people were over here. The provost and his people were over here, and I was associate provost, so I was over here. And you walked through double glass doors, and my office was right there on the right. The receptionist was in front, but my office was the only one that had a door directly open and easily visible to an active shooter who may have come in. And so I was very sensitive to planning ahead. I always create scenarios in my head. Well, if this happens, then what would I do? If this happens, then I would do this. And so I always, my door had to be open, but I always kept it locked so that if I needed to, I could just slam it shut and it would already be locked. I wouldn't have to take the time to lock it. And then I had 2 half-size bookcases that were right by that wall that I would have shoved or tipped over or whatever in front of the door. And the books would have made some pretty good material to help keep me safe from shots. Hiding under my desk wouldn't have done a thing. The wood was so thin on the shooter side that I would have been killed instantly. But I had a big window to my rear that looked out the back, and then just around the corner is the parking lot where my truck was, always parked. And so what I figured that I would do is if an active shooter came in and I wasn't dead on the first few shots, I would close my door, dump my bookcases in front of the door to stop him, throw my office chair through the window. It was a big, tall, wide window. And then jump out. It was like about a 3-foot drop, and then run to my truck and get the heck out of Dodge. So I don't know. I also thought, you know, when an active shooter comes into a room, however tall he is, he's looking at about eye level. So I wanted to get out of eye level, climb up on something, so if he entered the room, I would be high and out of, and this is if I, on the same wall where the door was, not standing in the back where he could see I was standing on something and take a shot, but rather up on the very same wall that he would be coming in. If I were up and he were coming in here, then I could hit him over the head with whatever I could devise as a weapon that was in my classroom. I had a pretty hefty glass vase that I could have used. Or, of course, I was in a university office. I could have used a book, good use of books. So because I have had so much training in this regard, that training has kicked in even now that I'm retired. Whenever I go into a new location, I always scan for where the exits are and have a plan in mind that if an active shooter was here, I'd go whatever direction, and this is what I would do, and I'd be sure that Jim was with me, or, you know, whatever. So it is always, always good to think about things like this, be prepared as much as possible, rather than facing a situation without having ever thought about it, and then cold, trying to figure out what is the best situation to do. Instinctively, we have a fight or flight impulse that is built in to our DNA. So as a last resort, that would certainly kick in. But it is good to know and to have in mind these things to help keep us safe. So I'm sad to have to even talk about this, and yet in today's world it is so very necessary. And so I hope that you will take this information, internalize it, figure out plans wherever you might be, and then share with your family what to do if there is an active shooter. Where would you meet? How would you get in contact with each other after everything is over, so that you and your family have a plan? So that is the extent of the information. I will leave the link to the FBI movie so that you can check it out. It's just a little 4-minute video clip that I thought was quite good. And I hope this is helpful to you. And we will see you very soon with another video that will be on a much happier note.